You have to kind of pick your battles, right? Like, what is most important here, your ego or like your peace? And like for me, like peace always wins. Like, F the ego in this situation. Like, I just want peace. So I think, yeah, like don't let the ego because where's that gonna get you? It's not gonna give you happiness. It's not gonna make you feel fulfilled.
Thank you for coming on the show today. Really appreciative and honored. And it's almost like the perfect thing comes at the perfect time, as always. And so I'm grateful that you're on the show in this moment.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm grateful as well to be here.
So I was going to start in a different place, but a mini crisis happens right before we hit record. And I was curious, without going so much into what the mini crisis is for me, I'm curious how you handle those types of situations.
Like, what type of crises?
That's a good question. So a situation.
How severe
Right.
are we talking?
So a non-severe situation that causes you anxiety. To be more specific, so you can have context, there was an episode that I just posted on my podcast, but the Spotify link isn't working and I can't play it. And it's this ambient anxiety in my head that's been going on for the last hour, particularly because I can't do anything about it right now. And it's seemingly like the perfect person to ask or talk about that too, because you have an air of peace and calmness that you're surrounded by. So
I think that's come with practice. And just like everyone else, I have my moments of going off, cussing, being super annoyed, yelling at myself, saying things like, oh, you're so dumb, you should have thought of that. And I have all those episodes like most people. But I think what you learn with time is that most of the time when you go off, like something like a small inconvenience happens and you get super mad, for some people it helps them to get out of the system and then they like proceed to focusing and trying to fix the issue. For me, that doesn't really work. I just get more upset. And it's almost like I fuel myself even more to the point of, depending on the extent of it, I can just ruin my entire day, like for myself over something quite insignificant. So I try to be more rational, more like problem solving focused. And I think that's something you just have to remind yourself of whenever you are in, like you said, like a link is not working. Okay, you can be super mad. You can like smash your keyboard and call yourself names. Or you can figure out, how am I going to get this thing to work? Because ultimately that's what you're looking to solve, right? There's a problem. And I think that's the best way of going about it. Just trying to calm yourself and thinking calming thoughts and realizing that, okay, this isn't actually going to help getting me from point A to B. And that's a difficult reminder sometimes, because it's all about distinguishing like what you're feeling and what you know to be true. If that makes sense. So let's say my audio was like not work right now, or like there would be like a problem, right? The smartest and rational thing would be to try to solve that so we can get on with the podcast and have this conversation. Yeah.
what are the thoughts that you come back to that are calming, that help you remain at peace?
And knowing that my thoughts and my actions are going to affect my mood, are going to affect my day. And I know that I am, for the most part, in control of either having a good day and being in a good mood, as much as I have the power to have a bad day and be in a bad mood. And if I get upset over something small, then I'm already entering that like danger zone of if I react on this thing, I am more likely to also react on another inconvenience. And our days are like full of inconveniences. Like we can't avoid that. Like things are not working. It's technology, it's other people. Like there are a lot of things that aren't really in our control.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy to allow yourself to be very affected by like the daily inconveniences, or you can kind of train yourself to rather than reacting, trying to solve them. And I think to some people it comes more naturally. Some people are just like naturally super enthusiastic and they're like, oh, we're going to fix it, and they fix it. And some people are more reactive and perhaps more sensitive. But regardless of how you are naturally, air quotes,
Yeah.
I think it's something that you can like practice.
What resources have you found most effective to help you get to a centered place?
I think the main resource, honestly, is just like my own personal experiences. Because the way I see it is that all of our experiences are what, like, we're always writing our own kind of guide book for life, like textbook for life. Because with everything that you experience, it's something new that you're learning. And the good thing to do is to take those experiences and remember them for next time when you experience something similar, so that you have the tools, like a toolbox, to know how to handle situations. So if I know that, okay, last time that I reacted this way when situation X happened, the outcome was this. Was that a good outcome? Or do I want to act or react differently this time to have a different outcome? So ultimately, of course, there are like podcasts you can listen to where people talk about mindset and meditation and all of that. And those are good resources. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and read random articles on things, and that definitely like subconsciously, I think, also affects the way that I think and the way that I view the world. But ultimately, I really think that like the best teacher is just experience. It's the most effective, I think.
I would agree, but I think sometimes when you have the experience but don't reflect on it, or don't have there's no time to process the experience,
Totally.
it's not effective. Meaning like
Totally.
people can have experiences for 80 years, but if you don't journal about it or think about it or go on a walk and are like, what happened today or what happened this week and why did I act this way? That's where the real growth happens, right?
Totally. I mean, I definitely agree. Yeah, I think you said something really important there, that like we all know people, and maybe we have been that person ourselves, where like you like a behavior becomes a pattern where they, like, let's say, make the same mistake over and over again. I think that's the classic example of not reflecting maybe enough, or maybe reflecting but not acting upon what you have, like the information that you've gathered for yourself. So absolutely, I think with anything you go through, like I'm a big fan of journaling, like you just mentioned. I think that's helped me kind of like pick apart situations and things that I've gone through or experienced, to really try to understand, okay, why do I think this thing happened, or how did I react, or what could I have done differently to maybe get a different outcome? So yeah, I think we shouldn't, like personally, I don't like just brushing things off, especially if this, like an experience has had a big impact on my life, if it's something important, because I don't want to repeat old patterns. I think time is so valuable, and you don't want to continuously repeat patterns and kind of torture yourself into making like bad decisions or self-sabotaging. So yeah, personally, journaling has definitely been huge. Yeah.
How has posting on YouTube been a way for you to reflect about previous versions of yourself?
It's a really good question. I actually think it's really interesting going back to my older videos because, I mean, there's so much that when I go back now, I'm like, did I really? Is that what I thought? Because I really disagree with like my past self. And I love that. Like, I love when that happens. I think I would be slightly, like, I would be wondering if I were to go back to my videos from like 3 years ago and I still agreed with everything. I think I would wonder, like, am I just like, am I reflecting enough? Am I growing at all? But knowing that I'm thinking differently on some things, not on everything. I mean, there's some things that I'm like, yep, been like that from the beginning, and I'm still the exact same. But I think it's really interesting because it's like I say that my YouTube videos are kind of like they're like open journal entries. It's basically what I say when someone asks, what do you do on YouTube? And I think it's true because I go back, like I said, and it's an older version of myself. And sometimes I agree with her, sometimes I don't. And I love seeing that growth. And I've definitely also grown so much through the community, through like the comments of other people, the messages, people teaching me things and correcting me on things and like offering their perspective. And I love when people like, if I talk about a subject and they're like, hey, Lana, you should listen to this podcast episode on this subject, or like read this book or this article, or they're like, people will share the most random things with me. And I'm like, wow, that was so interesting. And I'll take notes and I'll say them. So yeah, I'm super grateful to have that community to also help me grow into a hopefully better, well-rounded person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though, because you feel the same way as I do about the previous versions of yourself and watching them on the screen. But a lot of people have the opposite reaction. They can't watch previous videos of themselves, or they get upset when someone corrects them. Why do you think that is? And what could you say to help that person be more comfortable with the previous version of themselves?
I think just becoming comfortable with cringing and making peace with the fact that it's actually a good sign that you're growing. And it means that you're doing something right. I think one of the most like fundamentally good qualities and important qualities in a person is the ability to have an open mind and to change your mind and to not shut people off because they view the world differently than you. I think, especially in today's culture where we are, I think, very quick to judge people because they think differently than us, and we automatically assume that they must be wrong and I must be right, and you should be on my team, otherwise you're bad. And I'm not like, I don't subscribe to that mindset at all. And so I think bringing that back to myself of just understanding that it's part of the human experience to change your mind and to grow, and it's a good thing. And I think also if you don't look back, because I also look back on like my old journal entries, and I look back on like old notes that I've taken, and there's so much that I think differently on. And again, like, yeah, I will cringe and I will think something is embarrassing, and I'm not like, some entries aren't things that I would ever share because I'm like, oh, did I really write that? That's so embarrassing. I can't believe I did that or said that or thought that. But like, it's not that serious, I think, at the end of the day. And I think that's also like a quality that I can admire in other people, just not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about like your podcast? Because do you ever look back on old episodes and cringe or think it's...
I don't look back and cringe. I look back and be like, oh, that's a different version of myself, slightly in some way that was presenting itself. And it's great to have grown in these ways. And I can see how some of my current beliefs are from previous versions of that. And I can see what stayed and what hasn't. And for me, it's been an incredibly fun process of getting to know myself better, because you have the context of all the time that you've spent between you posting that thing and now. So that's really been impactful for me in my own growth, and I'm grateful for it.
So,
For you, one of the things that you've said before is that one of your pet peeves is
oh
seeing
God.
people seeing people waste their own potential.
Yeah. Because I
One,
go off on Twitter sometimes. I'm like, did I say something stupid? Like, what is he going to bring up now?
no. So I'm curious, why in particular is that one of your pet peeves, and how have you guarded against that in your own life?
I think this pet peeve emerged when throughout my life, I have been around certain people who have been, I don't know if talented is the right word, but they've had something about them um, that I'm like, you are so good and you should just do something with this. Like either they're super funny or they're super just charismatic or they're a good singer, writer. I don't know. Just, like there's something about them where I've been like, damn, like you're so good at this. Like why don't you XYZ? And they want to, but they just kind of are stuck in this cycle of either like not believing in themselves or being scared or feeling like they aren't good enough, like dealing with imposter syndrome. Um, and I think having met those people time and time again and knowing that you could live such a fulfilling life and maybe they haven't been happy and I've been like, well, try this and like maybe you'll find like some source of happiness and you can utilize this amazing quality or skill that you have. And I think, yeah, like meeting those people time and time again just has made me frustrated when I like meet someone and they have something about them and they don't believe in themselves. And it just like, who am I to say it drives me mad? Because like ultimately it's up to them what they do with their lives. But I think we all like want to see other people succeed and be happy and like do good in the world and do good for themselves. So I think it's just frustrating sometimes. And for myself, I think like most people, I also sometimes deal with imposter syndrome. And I think like sometimes it's just difficult taking it to heart when someone like compliments you or tells you you're so good at this or you're like, whatever the compliment or praise is. And maybe that's like rooted in like a like never like not feeling good enough when you were younger or going through some sort of a difficult time where you kind of felt like you just weren't that good. And I think kind of doing it anyway and forcing yourself almost to believe people when they tell you that, no, this is really good. And also just seeing kind of the receipts. Like if you're like for myself, sometimes if I'm like, okay, is this video even good enough? Or is this like, will anyone care about this? And then I have to remind myself, like, actually you're doing something right? Like people are watching this and they're commenting, they're interacting, they're sending you messages. And some of the messages that I received had like put me to so many tears and that are like just like receipts, I think. So not that you should need external validation, but it helps. Like ultimately we like it when people like what we do and everyone likes being praised. Like there's nothing to hide there. So yeah, I think trusting yourself and learning to give yourself the validation and then also being accepting and welcoming of the validation of others. And that's also a process. It's something you, I think, learn.
One of the things that I like to do is I like to keep a, a folder in my phone of different comments that really hit me at a deep level, because when the downtimes inevitably happen, it's like you just pull up that folder and you're back to the feeling that you felt when somebody said that thing that really made you feel seen or appreciated in that moment.
Yeah.
What were the comments or comment that made you cry, and why do you think it made you cry?
So some comments are just when something like when someone shares something very personal. something like a long story about how they, for example, used to feel like they weren't lovable, or they were very insecure, or they were an outsider, like something that just made them feel like they weren't enough or that they weren't loved. And then something I said, or some things that I said, affected them and changed their like perception of themselves and turned their lives around. And even then, it's still like surreal to really believe that, like taking that in and someone telling you, hey, this thing you did changed my life somehow. It's a very strange experience, but I've learned to just like welcome that and be like, great, like amazing, awesome, I did that and you did that, and that's so good. So I think anything that like pulls someone in the right direction, something that I say that pulls someone in the direction that they want to go in, I think any comment like that is just amazing, and that's what it makes you want to keep going even when it's difficult or when you don't really want to for whatever reason. Do you ever deal with imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is just the two words we've used to describe insecurity. It like makes insecurity feel more approachable, which I appreciate. And the truth is, I don't feel a lot of imposter syndrome or insecurity because I don't put myself on a pedestal of trying to, like, I'm not trying to put myself above anyone else. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And imposter syndrome doesn't always come from that place of like, I'm above you telling you what to do to change your life. But I feel like the times when I have felt imposter syndrome is because I viewed myself on a stage of like, I'm trying to save the life, or I'm trying, but I feel as if I'm just a human being having a human experience. And if that is helpful to someone in some situation, great. But there's also no expectation for me to do that, even if it has helped people in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think that I'm like taking mental notes. That's a good mindset to have, I think.
Yeah. Where does your imposter syndrome or insecurity stem from, do you believe?
So I don't think I deal with it as much anymore because it's kind of similar to what you said. I'm not, like, I haven't told anyone that if you watch me, your life is going to change, or what I'm putting out there is going to like bring world peace or anything like that. Like the expectations in that sense aren't like, if it doesn't do that, it's not detrimental. Like it's fine. And I think just reminding myself of that. And like you said, kind of not putting those expectations on myself. But I think you worded it like really well, and that's kind of how I've been dealing. But where it came from initially, I don't know. I think partly it's a bit human, where we want validation, and I don't know. Sometimes it's just hard to believe people for some reason when they, like, if you get a lot of compliments or you get a lot of praise. I don't think.
But go deeper.
I don't think it.
Why? Why is it hard to believe people? For you specifically.
Yeah. I think like some sort of an insecurity from somewhere down the line in my life. I'm not sure where, why. Like I said, partly I think it's just naturally human to be a bit afraid of like, what are people gonna think, and are they being honest with me, and being a bit questioning of like, I don't know, what people are saying, what their intentions are, where is it coming from, what do they mean when they say this, and have they actually, like, when someone says you changed my life, like, have they thought about that enough? Like, I'll overthink it sometimes and be like, are you sure I changed it? Like, was it me? Like, did you reflect on that enough before you like wrote that comment? So I think it's maybe part of my nature of being a bit questioning of like things and people in general. like even in my personal life, when someone tells me something, I always ask them like, have you thought about that enough? Like, I don't know, I take words very seriously. I don't like just like when people throw things out. I try not to like just throw things out without having thought of them and given it time. Yeah, I just think words carry so much value. And so when someone says something very serious, like, or when someone like very serious, like for example, when someone says this video helped me from hurting myself, like it's such a big thing to take in, where it's like, I think because it's such a serious statement, it makes me think like, have you thought of that enough? Like, are you sure that's what helped you? And maybe it was. Like, I've seen videos, like I've been a big fan of Jordan Peterson for many years, for example, and like especially I would watch him a lot in like 2017, 16. And like literally it was him that made me think differently. So I know that it's possible. Like we all know the power of one person or like one thing that someone says, whether that's like a celebrity or a teacher or like someone who's working in your building or something. I don't know. Like, again, going back to the value that words have, we all know it's very possible that something someone says can definitely change your life. But I think when that person is you, it's just difficult to take in sometimes.
What were the moment or moments that started making you take words more seriously?
I think just things like, so some people, I think we're all so different, right? Like someone will say, oh, I love you, like to everyone, like for example, right? And that's fine. Like it's a way to express affection, and maybe they don't like love that person, but it's how they talk, it's how they express themselves, and that's fine. And I've kind of always been the person who's like, wait, like you love them? Like, what do you mean by love them? Like the way you love your mother? Like, you know, like I will like I will take it a bit too far sometimes, and maybe that makes me like the party pooper, I don't know. But I think, yeah, but for some reason I've just not really been the type of person to, like, generally, like obviously I do say things and I'm like, oops, I didn't actually mean that, or that was wrong, or that was bad. Like that happens most definitely. But mostly I like to just be a bit more careful, because like words carry so much power, and that power can be like have a negative influence or it can have a positive influence. And in either direction, it can be quite serious. Like I know for myself, and I think I saw a TikTok on this, and with a lot of comments from people relating, where they said like, I still can't forget this thing that someone told me when I was like in third grade. Like something about an insecurity. Actually, maybe I made a TikTok about, I don't know. It was something on social media, where it was like, I still think about this thing that someone told me in third grade. And for that person who said that thing to them in third grade, they probably didn't like think about it, you know? Like, for example, for me, I've always had like insecurity over my ears. And for so many years, like I would carry that insecurity because someone, when I was like 14, told me I had like big ears. And there I was like 23, 24, still hiding my ears. So going back to like the power of words, for that person, they were probably just like, they were a kid, they were saying dumb things and they didn't care about that. But I carry that with me for so many years. So I think having enough of those experiences, both good and bad, kind of has just like taught me and made me realize that, wow, like words are super powerful for good and bad.
So with the situation with your ears, have you gone back and forgiven that person for?
Yeah,
Yeah?
totally.
But,
Yeah.
okay, so how did that situation come to be? How did you realize that it was that person's comment? Because I think a lot of people listening are potentially dealing with the situation like that where they have some insecurity about something, but maybe don't even realize where it stemmed from, or they realize where it stemmed from, but are scared to confront that person or situation again to release themselves from it. Because that's so often what happens when we face our fears. We get released from that situation. And I don't know why that happens, but it's a fascinating thing. So take me through your process with that.
Yeah. So I'm very big on forgiveness. And it doesn't have to be like I call you and tell you, hey, I forgive you. So I didn't like physically go back to that person and tell them like, hey, remember like in third grade, we're cool now. But I think like it depends on the situation, right? Like when it's something you got bullied for, especially if you were younger. Like I was not perfect as a kid. Like I'm still not perfect, but especially as a kid. Like I think kids are like the meanest little people like that walk among us. Like they say things that are super hurtful because like they don't know better. Even teenagers, like to an extent, say things and do things, and like they're finding themselves and they're testing their limits and they're like learning. Like they have no idea like how to navigate. Like we're adults and we still don't really know how to navigate through life. So like, as kids, it's even more difficult. So I think that in itself, like anyone who was like mean to me, bullied me, or anything like that, like it's so forgiven, like a long time ago, because I knew that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, like some people aren't very pro forgiving. They're like, I don't need to forgive, I can still move on. For me, I think to make peace with a situation, I need that to forgive in order to move on. And knowing that if I don't forgive, I'm not going to have peace. Like that knowledge is, or that information, I guess, is enough for me to like take that step into forgiving. And even if it's someone that, like, I don't want to speak for all situations. Obviously, some people go through like the most traumatic, terrible experiences, and I sure cannot speak for that. But I've been hurt. I've been disappointed. I've been like, had the experiences that most of us to some level have had. And I know that like if I don't forgive them in my heart, that doesn't mean that we have to like be friends or talk, or like it's not forgotten. Like we don't forget things. Like it's still there and it's going to be with us for the rest of our lives. But it doesn't have to affect us. And I think that's where forgiveness comes in. Like if you walk around carrying resentment and carrying negative emotions in your heart, like you're hurting yourself. You're not hurting the person. Like they're living all their own lives. They're finding happiness. They're finding love, or not. Like, I don't know. But they're moving on. And so in hating and not forgiving and resenting, you're hurting yourself. You are delaying your own healing and your own growth. And ultimately, like the experiences that have hurt us somehow, whether that's like being bullied for your ears or like relationship ending or whatever the situation is, like it's in the past. And if you keep looking back with hatred in your heart, you're just like you're holding yourself back. And I think that should be enough for you to like really be motivated to be like, hey, you know what, this thing happened. I don't want to have that person in my life maybe, but in my heart I forgive them and I move on. And that can be super hard for some people, but I think it's all about like loving yourself. If you know that that's what's going to help you, then like, you're going to do it.
I love that. And it reminds me of something you've said before, which is inner peace equals outer glow. Why do we get outer glow when we forgive others who have hurt us, or forgive ourselves, or love ourselves? Like why does that happen? Where when we clean our inner world, the outer world, you appear in a glow state.
But let me ask you this. Like, do you feel more beautiful when you're happy or when you're angry? Like, when do you feel your best? Like, obviously, literally physically beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. I feel physically best when I am doing the things internally that fuel my body and mind.
Yeah. Like when you're happy, you're feeling peaceful, you're taking care of yourself. I think most people, we feel the most beautiful when we're doing that. Like literally beautiful. Like I feel like they get a different glow. And even like I think maybe you experience this as well, where someone tells you like, oh, you look happy. Like maybe that's happened to you sometime. And that's like the best compliment. You're like, wow, like you can tell by people's energy, by the way they carry themselves, by the way they walk. Even when I'm happy, I'm nicer. Like I'm a nicer person. Like if I'm walking my dog and I'm in a good mood, I'm going to say hey to more people. I'm going to stay in chat with other dog owners. If I'm not happy, like I'm probably going to frown. I'm not going to be super social. I'm not going to be as I'm not going to look as approachable. And I think most people are like that. So yeah, I really do believe that the way that we feel internally does physically manifest itself.
I've said before that the highest ROI activity for this podcast is to meditate. And the reason why is because I'm interacting with people and communicating with them. And if I'm not showing up in a state that I've fed myself first, then how is that going to provide the best interaction for the person that I'm speaking to and or the person that is listening to the interaction? So for you, what have you found to be the most impactful ways to nourish yourself or get to inner peace?
So I think not delaying things that I know are somehow putting me down. Like let's say I'm having like an argument with my sister and it's really affecting my mood and I'm like thinking about it, I'm annoyed, I'm angry. I'm not going to wait till tomorrow to call her or like to meet her up. Like I try to deal with things as much as I can ASAP, like get it out of the way. I try to not like delay this thing that I know is like crawling on my skin, like an annoying mosquito that is just like buzzing in my ear. Like I don't wait to get it off of my skin. I try to deal with it as soon as I can. And sometimes we can't. It depends on the situation. But I think that's like one of the keys of just like not waiting. Kind of how you say, like some people say like don't fall asleep angry at like your spouse or like anyone you care about. And I try to have that mentality too, like try to deal with things as soon as you can. Yeah, I think that's one thing. And sometimes that's not easy. Like sometimes we have pride and our egos that get in the way. We're like, I'm not going to call her. Like she should call me, or like, I'm not going to deal with that. But like, okay, so you're going to wait because of your ego, but then you're going to feel like shit all day. Like you have to kind of pick your battles, right? Like what is most important here, your ego or like your peace? And like for me, like peace always wins. Like F the ego in this situation. Like I just want peace. So I think, yeah, like don't let the ego like, because where's that going to get you? It's not going to give you happiness. It's not going to make you feel fulfilled. It's not, what are you gaining from like, I don't know, from that? Probably not much.
When did your desire for peace start?
I got old.
You're not that old. You're not old at all. You have an old soul. But you're
maybe
not old.
Like sometimes. I think like, to be honest, I think maybe with age, like when you're in your teens-ish, I think you're more like, you don't care if there's a little bit of drama, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like it's fine. You're learning, you go to school and like whatever. But then you get to like your mid-20s-ish and like, it's just not, there isn't enough space for like drama or being annoyed or having someone like you just, I think you just start craving, maybe with age, maybe not for everyone. I don't know. Maybe some people are like this when they're 14 as well. But personally, I think just with age, I just started craving like, I just want to have peaceful people in my life. I want to be at peace. I want to just be able to enjoy the things that I enjoy. And also because I'm in a position where I can. Like, I think talk about independence a lot too. Like when you learn to, like, you love yourself, you love your own company, you have built a life for yourself that like no one can take away from you. Like you have your own place that is yours. You have your own job or like education, like the things that are like yours. Like no one can take this. So also maybe because I like got older and I got those things, like I created this life for myself that like no one can take the little bits from me. Like I have my dog and home and all of that. And it's like, so I don't need to put up with more than maybe I had to, let's say like when you're in school, where you need to kind of fit into the group because otherwise you're going to have like a bad school experience, or you need this person to like you, otherwise you're not going to be invited to this party and people are going to talk about you. Like there's so many factors when you're like a teenager. It's super stressful and it's all about belonging and fitting in. And understandably, like it's terrible not fitting in, I think, when you're in school. Like it affects your entire school experience and your mental health. But when you kind of find that comfort within yourself with age and when you become more independent, and those things, I think, like give you this incredible, I guess, privilege of like being able to kind of pick and choose more in your life. And when you have that, you can just choose to not allow certain things in your life that are disrupting your peace.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like some people get older and they don't seek or desire more peace. But you've gotten older and have. So why?
How have you gotten as you've gotten older?
So
you're like, I want all the drama.
No. I think that it's a result of just seeing what was serving me and what wasn't. Like someone asked me the other day, what are your vices? And I struggled to come up with a good answer because I realized that after I've just been spending time removing the vices that I've had over and over and over again over the past 5 years. And that has given me a feeling of peace. And so it's like first it was drinking, and then it was hooking up with girls, and then it was gambling. And so slowly but surely, all of these things that I had picked up in my first 22 years, over the last 5, I've tried to take down. And I just found that doing each one of those just made me feel better. And yeah, I mean, it's, but I don't know why I have tried to disintegrate all my vices where some people don't or can put up with theirs.
I think maybe ultimately it's a bit about like your values and the type of life that you want. So if you're someone who wants if you're someone who wants to have a lot of friends, a lot of social interaction, like a lot of traveling, a lot of all of that, I think inevitably there is going to be a little less peace because like the more people, for example, that are involved in your life, the more there's going to be different opinions and different ways of thinking and being. And so I think when you kind of tighten up your circle, if that's what you want, which some people do when they get older, like I've tightened my circle, there is just less going on. And I think that too just like makes it easier to maintain that peace of mind. Whereas if you're going in the opposite direction where you have like 20 different groups of friends and something's going on there and someone is breaking up there and they're like, she did that and they did that. And, like, it's just, I think, inevitably going to be like more going on because there's more people involved. And maybe you like that. And like, that's fine. I don't know. I think it just depends on what makes me feel like I'm living a good life. And for some people, it's that. And for some people, it's more like you or maybe more like me.
I've literally never thought about that. That the more people you bring into your life or that come into your life, the more chaos is inevitably going to ensue because people have problems. And sometimes, especially when you're close to those people, you get invested in those problems.
Yeah.
And it's something I guess I'd like to be mindful of as I continue doing this podcast. I'm interacting with at least 3 people a week, and
And
that is inevitably going to bring in more people and more people and more people. So how do you maintain peace when there are so many people getting added and you're interacting with so many people in your day to day?
so, like, the interactions that really affect me personally are with those that are the closest to me, like in my personal life. And that's a pretty small circle. That doesn't mean that there is never like a conflict or like we're all always on the same page and like hugging trees together. Like, obviously, things happen and we disagree and there's an argument, and that's fine. Like, I think that's also part of any relationship. Like, you think something, I think something, we disagree, there's an argument, and then we find a way to like meet each other in the middle. But because like my circle in my personal life is quite small, I don't really see it as like, yes, I have quite a big community online, and that community means a lot to me. And the things that like people say or write does affect me, and it does feel like in some way it feels like we're all like friends. But I think to stay sane, you can't like actually think, okay, like 1+ million people, I'm going to consider everyone's emotions. Like, that would be very strange. So I think trying to create some sort of a distance of like, yeah, I'm doing podcasts and I'm interacting through comments and messages, but like reminding myself that you can't let every conversation, every comment, everything like affect me like IRL, like as I go about my day and I like meet up my friends. But that's not to say to like, it's not just a bad thing to do that. Like, this conversation is super enjoyable and like I want to take this with me, like things that we're talking about and discussing. But I think creating like a bit of a distance and kind of knowing that what someone writes online isn't the same thing as what like my best friend tells me. Like, she knows me and all of that. And so it's, yeah, I just don't view it as the same kind of interaction necessarily.
Yeah. Along those same lines, I've started to view success as the people closest to me thinking the highest of me. Because it's like, if you listen to me on one podcast and you form a judgment about me, you probably don't have all the context that my mother does about my own life. So, yeah, it's something that I think we often don't think about, is the idea that the comment that you get having the same value as someone close to you. And I think we don't think about that because evolutionarily, if someone told you something, it was because they were in your tribe and they were explaining to you about something that you should or shouldn't do. So I think like removing that limbic part of our brain is really important.
Yeah. Then, yeah, I think it's just important to keep, because even on the opposite side, like let's say everyone online loves you and thinks you are like super kind and super smart, and meanwhile no one in your personal life actually thinks you are kind. Like, that is also not like, that you should really pay attention and value that maybe more. Like, if your entire friend group and family think you're actually very mean, but everyone online thinks you're very kind, obviously your family and friends know you in a very different way. And so that, in my opinion, should weigh more. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the lesson that's taken you longest to learn?
And the fact that I'll have to relearn some things.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, there are things where like you go through something and you're like, ooh, lesson learned. That's not going to happen again. And then it happens again. So I think giving myself grace is a lesson of like, I'll do my best not to repeat old patterns. I'll do my best to Like, let's say, okay, I did not trust my gut that time. Okay, lesson learned. I'm going to trust my gut. And then a year later, a situation happens and I did not trust my gut. And I was like, damn, I should have trusted my gut. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that some lessons are going to have to repeat themselves, maybe 2 times, maybe 3. But like, don't let it get to 10, because then it's
10
a
is
bit
the
too much.
cutoff.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like 10 times, like, okay, let's learn here, Lana. But yeah, that you can repeat old patterns, but like, still, that doesn't mean that you should like stop reflecting or think that you're doomed to like repeat those patterns. But there's so many different circumstances. Like, a lesson that you learn in one situation might present itself so differently in a future situation that you can't even like connect the dots because it's so different. Like, let's say a past relationship with another relationship. Like, maybe the sign that you should pay attention to is similar, but the situations and circumstances are so different that you can't really connect the situation to the past one. And so you repeat an old pattern. And I think giving yourself grace in those situations. But yeah, the lesson is that lessons might have to repeat themselves.
And for me, what comes to mind is that habits that you do or actions that you really like or admire about yourself. Let's say it's like, for me, it's been meditation or working out, and then forgetting those because life inevitably gets in the way. And then being like, oh, I remember I was feeling really good when I was doing this activity. And coming back to it is actually a really difficult thing, because sometimes you get in the process or the thought pattern of like, I was so much better at this activity when I was doing it consistently. I'm going to have to start over. And I start to get in that mental loop. And then it's like, you sometimes also think you know something, and because you've done it in the past, but then you're not actually doing it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think like, so we know what's good for us. Like, we all know.
Yeah.
It's very easy, like easy, air quotes. Like, we know that we're going to feel good if we eat well. We know we're going to feel good if we work out, if we work on our projects, if we like nurture our relationships. We all know this, but we still, here is where it's like an error in evolution, I think. Like, we know the things that we should be doing, but we also often choose not to do them. Either because like we're lazy, or we're not motivated enough, or we feel like we don't have enough information to start or do it. So I think that's something we all experience. Like, there's no one who was questioning, like you said, exercising, for example. No one is questioning whether or not it's good for you. Like, right? Like, I've never seen anyone be like, actually, you should not be exercising. That would be very strange. So we all know this, but yet so many of us, myself included in the past, now I'm like really on it. But
I saw
in the
that
past,
last video linked below.
Yeah, I'm still going strong with the workouts.
Nice.
Thanks for the plug. But still, like, so many of us struggle with just doing it. And so, yeah, I know there's a glitch in how things that we know and the things that we do, it doesn't always align.
What I loved about that video with you talking about your journey back to exercising consistently is how many little things that you mentioned, like finding someone to get your dog, to take care of your dog, and putting clean workout clothes and making sure I always have them. Those are things that I think would stop people, but they wouldn't think about. And I appreciate you highlighting them and putting them in the video, because it is the small things that often hold us back because we make them bigger in our head.
Yeah. And I think like most of us have, like, part of us is just lazy. Like, we want things to go smoothly and like to just happen. And so as for working out, for example, let's say, okay, I'm going to work out in the morning tomorrow. and then you don't prepare. So you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, where did I put my like workout clothes? Okay, they're not in that drawer. Are they here? Are they there? So you're starting your morning having to make all these decisions and like being confused and looking for things. And oh, wait, could that person take my dog? And then you call someone, you're like, here. And like all of a sudden you put yourself in this like super stressful, unorganized situation at like 6 a.m. and you're already struggling to even work out. So you're setting yourself up for and like I've done this so many times. This is why I've learned my lesson and I'm like sharing it. That's why I'm all about preparation. Like if I know, okay, I'm working out tomorrow morning, and after my workout, I'm gonna want to make a smoothie. Okay, so I need to make sure today that I have a banana or bananas, that I have like yogurt, like that I have the ingredients so that when I get home from my workout, I can make my smoothie. So I don't have to make all these unnecessary, like, I don't have to put up unnecessary steps or like things to think about. I just want things to go smoothly. And I don't know if you're that way, like if you like planning for things, because that way they just kind of happen more easily. And I'm all about like not making life more difficult than it like has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people want to check out more, I recommend the video that you posted and also Atomic Habits by James Clear, which you mentioned in the video, because it's like if this is resonating with you in some level, and then checking out that book, I think will be impactful.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, you mentioned before, you've said, I fear not being remembered. The thought of not being remembered makes me feel my time here wasn't worth much.
You meant on my Twitter, and I'm scared.
Why'd you say that?
Why did I say that? Let's see. I think if we all, or okay, not we all, but I think generally maybe, and tell me if you agree or disagree, we want to feel like we're doing something good for the world. Like we were just here and like had fun and left. Like maybe for some people. But I think generally we have this idea as humans that we want to have some sort of like a positive impact. Like when we're gone, we want like our grandkids to be like, my grandma did this and she was super awesome, you know? And I don't know if that's because we like praise or because we want to leave something. I think we just want to leave something behind that matters, like that did something good, because we have like on average, what is it, like 75, 80 years if we're very lucky on this earth. And it would feel like because the chance of us being born is just so small, and having lived all those years and leaving nothing of value to anyone or to the earth or to people or whatever it is. I don't know how to explain it other than it would just feel like a waste somehow. And that impact does not have to be like bringing world peace or like saving all the animals. Just something like being a good friend or like helping someone change the direction of their life or helping a pet on the street. I don't know. Something that gives some sort of a value and that hopefully also impacts like the generations after us.
So what's interesting is that it would be hard for me to imagine somebody 100 years ago saying that they want to impact the world, right? The greater world. It was likely more localized in the sense of I want my grandchildren to think highly of me.
Oh, yeah.
But now we exist in a world where we're so hyper connected that it almost seems like many of our missions are to impact thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Yeah. And so how has social media and in the internet changed how we view success in helping people? for so many?
There. That's such a good question. I think the numbers that we're dealing with today are just outrageous. I think even having like 1,000 people watch a video is insane.
I know.
Like 1,000 people. So imagine like a room or a stadium of 1,000 people. Like, can you imagine having like a PowerPoint presentation of 1,000 people? That's so nerve-wracking. And then imagine 10,000 or like 1,000,000 or people who have like tens of millions of listeners or views. That's such an insane amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think inevitably with social media, we've just become blinded to those numbers. And like you said, I think we're just so connected that we feel like maybe there's something to it where it's like in the past, maybe we were more concerned about our close community. Like I want to do something good for my family or this village or something. But now I think because we know that we're so connected, maybe we feel some sort of a responsibility to the rest of the world because we are more aware of what is going on in the rest of the world. You know, back in, I don't know how many years ago, if you lived in Sweden like I live in, you probably, like, you didn't see live footage of a war or something going on in a different part of the world. It was more isolated, more of an isolating experience. But now it's all up in our faces all the time. And because we know that we can make more of an impact today than we could however many years ago, I think with that comes maybe a desire to have an impact that is maybe bigger than your family or your like close community. But also I think some people still very highly just value being like a good father, a good mother, a good sibling. And I think ultimately that is what, like, we shouldn't forget that because we get so caught up in like, oh, but I want to influence the world. I think in every circumstance, we should really start super small and be like, am I being a good friend? Like, am I a good sister right now? Like, I'm online and I'm talking about all these things and getting complimented, but like, am I being a good sister? You know, I think scaling back sometimes and kind of getting back to reality and the things that are important, which to me is like my close circle. Like they're like for most people, my number one. And so, yeah, as much as I too sometimes think, hey, it would be cool if I, like someone from across the world was positively influenced by something. And it is really cool. But not forgetting that like you're also living your day-to-day life in your little bubble in your town, wherever you're living. And so what kind of friend are you and what kind of partner, sister, brother, son, daughter, parent? Like we shouldn't forget that.
Were there any moments in particular that you had to check yourself where the person you were presenting yourself to be online was different enough where you noticed it from the person you were acting as in real life?
I think I had one moment where my mom was helping me record something. And then I checked the footage back and like, I don't know what it was. Like she hadn't pressed play or it was like something was off with the camera settings. Like she doesn't work with cameras. Like I'm just handing it to her and she's helping me be like a good mother and a good person, right? And so it wasn't recorded the way that I wanted it to be recorded. And then I got upset at her. And immediately I felt so bad about myself. Because I think I was so caught up in like getting this footage right to then go live with it, to then have like all these people watch it. But like the person in front of me who was helping me was getting an attitude from me because she wasn't getting it right. So I think that's one of those moments that I was like, oh, like that's not good. Like, come on, like get back to reality. She's helping you here and she is here, physically here. Like, be nice. Yeah, I think that was one of those moments where I was like, ooh, that was not nice of me.
Thank you for sharing. And
yeah,
I think it's hard. you
Sorry,
know?
well,
Well,
that's
it's
just
hard
that.
to perfectly present yourself as the same exact person as your, in a sense, your ideal would act in a video. And
Uh,
when, particularly when you're giving advice, or when you're presenting an image of yourself of how you would like the world to act more, it's hard to, for that to be in alignment 1000% of the time. And
yeah.
I think the consumer might not realize that. And that, I think, is also another thing that's helped me with imposter syndrome or insecurity, is
Uh-huh.
that I can present myself or present the ideal of what I'd like and not live up to it every single moment, and be
Yeah.
okay with that, and try to work towards getting a closer alignment of my words and my actions every day,
And
but knowing that I'm not going to be perfect.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important. And like with social media, and like you're on social media, you're doing this podcast, and I'm on social media. And I think when you're doing it enough, like for an extended period of time, you learn just how easy it is to like really present yourself and your life any way that you can.
Mm,
It's actually quite frightening.
yeah.
Like it's happened that maybe like I'll post something, and like maybe I'll post a photo that was taken when I was like super happy and whatever. But the day I'm posting it, I'm not happy. Like I'm sad over something. I'm disappointed, whatever. But I'm posting it, and in that moment I'm realizing like obviously I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to be like, hey, I was happy in this photo, but right now I'm sad. Like I don't have to say that. But knowing that, wow, like I can actually post anything, and anyone who is on social media can post anything, act like anything, look like anything. Like there's so many factors that's really scary. And I think if you're not on social media, like it's so important to be aware of that. Like
Mm.
us who are, like know that we can present ourselves really any way that we want. Yeah, I think it's just so scary to think that some people aren't fully aware of that.
And I think that's why people are drawn to your content, for the authenticity of it, of the thoughtfulness of, look, I can do this at this time, and I'm telling you that I can feel sad and be posting a happy photo. But
Uh,
a lot of people are not as aware of themselves, and or won't want to tell you that. And
uh,
so your willingness to be truthful about your experience is, from my perspective, one of your advantages and one of your skills.
I think it's so important because I've also been on the other side where, when I was not on social media and I didn't know necessarily how easy it was to like present yourself a certain way or say something a certain way, and now that I am aware, because I know that back in the day, like it could impact me negatively too, where I could be like, these people are always happy, or they're always doing this and they're always looking amazing. But now when I'm doing this myself, like I know if we just take looks, for example, I know that the lighting, like moving like half an inch can completely change the way you look, like with light. Like that's just like a small thing. That's why when you're traveling to a tropical place,
Mm.
there's amazing lighting. Like you're gonna look way better than you are going to look in the middle of winter in Sweden. And that's just that's just a fact. So these small things that I think everyone, especially who is not on social media, should really know, that it's very easy to like present life and yourself really any way that you want today.
Mm.
And let's not even get into like all the filters, and like that's just a whole topic in itself.
How has becoming more known to more people impacted your own psychology and your own day-to-day experience?
I think mostly just, it's easy to say that it hasn't impacted me all that much, but I don't know. I don't know what I would be like and what my life would have been like had I not started my channel 3, 4 years ago. I don't know if I like, would I have been a better person, or would I have been not as good of a person? Would I have been less insightful, more insightful, happier, sadder? I don't know. I can sit here today and be like, it's mostly had a good impact because I'm kind of forced in a way to meet my thoughts a bit deeper when I'm like writing for my videos and I'm coming up with ideas. And I believe that's made me more insightful, and also insightful in a different way, I think. And like I mentioned earlier, like learning so much from the community and all of that. But I don't know, maybe my life would have been way better had I not. Like it's so hard to even think of like, what would my life have looked like? Or what would I have been like had this thing not happened? Had I not done this thing? I think it's good in the way that I think I'm more self-aware, but it's also not good in a way, because sometimes I don't really want to like dive deep into my thoughts. I don't really want to reflect too much on something that happened, but I also want, let's say, the video and the topic to be as, as meaningful as possible. And so, yeah, I know it's like good and it's not very good. And also staring at yourself a lot, I think, with social media in general, is still quite strange. And yeah, being on camera, like I don't always feel like being on camera. Yeah, it's very weird, like seeing yourself that much, whether that's like on a YouTube video or but mostly on YouTube video. I think it's very natural for human beings to be like looking at yourself and, oh, that's a flaw, or do I look like that, or like, yeah.
We've probably both collectively looked at ourselves more than most humans had in all of human history, and
Yeah,
that's
I think so.
that's a crazy thing to consider or to know, and how that impacts you, and how you must naturally think of yourself as the center of a world, whereas if your entire life was you had never seen a mirror, your whole life would be the outer world. And there's benefits and drawbacks to that as well. But
Yeah.
I appreciate the full picture you paint of what seemingly people think of as just a positive experience.
Yeah.
I like to end these podcasts with a challenge, or I ask the guest for a challenge to the audience or to someone listening, because someone has taken an hour or more of their time to listen to this. I like to leave someone with an action step that they can take from this episode or from something that we haven't talked about. Does a challenge come to mind for the audience?
Okay. Okay, so yeah. In your heart, forgive someone.
I love that.
Not because they deserve it, not because, like, put that aside, but for yourself, because you love yourself and you take care of yourself and you want inner peace. Pick someone and forgive them in your heart. Don't call them.
It's beautiful.
I think that's a challenge.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
I started this conversation feeling anger or tenseness, and I ended feeling peace and calmness, and that's a result of you and your answers and your thoughtfulness and wisdom. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And where can we send people to connect with you further?
Lana Blakely everywhere. So on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Podcast is on hold, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Lana Blakely everywhere.
Awesome. All linked below. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much.